Are we ready for a new world order?
Therefore, the United States is in the state of war, undeclared total war.
The key to the new war would be secrecy.
Hello and welcome back to the Jeremy Elliott Show. I'm Jeremy Elliott. In our last show, we covered an end-to-end overview of what I think the New World Order is and how it's being implemented. We ended up with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and we did an overview of what they are. In this episode, we'll cover not only what they are, but what they really mean. But before we get into that, stay up to date with everything Iconic by following us on all of our social media. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You can support us by going to patreon.com/The Iconic Podcast and making a monthly pledge. You can also support us by going to theiconiclabel.com and purchasing some of our gear. Now that we've covered that, let's get down to business. Mike Adams from Natural News gives us a good translation of what the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are and what they really mean behind the scenes. Goal number 1, end poverty in all of its forms everywhere. Well, the translation is to put everybody on government welfare systems, food stamps, housing subsidies, and handouts that make them obedient slaves to global government. Never allow the people in upward mobility to help themselves. Instead, you teach mass victimization and obedience to a government that provides, well, a monthly allowance, money for basic things like food and medicine, and you label that ending poverty. Number 2, you end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Really? What's the translation? Well, we're going to invade the entire planet with GMOs and Monsanto patented seeds while increasing the use of deadly herbicides under the false claim of quote unquote increased output of food crops. Then we're going to engineer genetically modified plants to boost specific vitamin chemicals while having no idea of the long-term consequences of genetic pollution or cross-species genetic experiments that are carried about openly in the Earth's fragile ecosystem. Number 3, we want to ensure healthy lives and promote the well-being of all at all ages. What's the translation? Well, they're really going to mandate 100 plus injections for all children and adults, heavy medication use on children and teens, mass medication prevention, and claim that they improve the health of the citizenry. Number 4, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. We're going to push a false history and a dumbed down education under what's known as Common Core curriculum and education standards that produce obedient workers rather than independent free thinkers. Never let the people learn the real history, or they might realize that they don't want to repeat it. Number 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. That's a touchy subject nowadays. Translation, well, they're going to criminalize Christianity. They're going to demonize males and promote the LGBTQ agenda everywhere. The real goal was never equality, but rather the marginalization and shaming of anyone who expresses any male characteristics whatsoever. The ultimate goal is to feminize society, creating widespread acceptance of gentle obedience along with, well, self-weakening ideas of communal property and sharing of everything. And to go against the narrative means what? To be excommunicated from society. Goal number 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Translation, allow powerful corporations to seize control of the world's water supplies and charge monopoly prices to build a new water delivery infrastructure that ensures, quote unquote, availability for all. Number 7, ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Translation, well, they're going to penalize coal, gas, and oil while pushing doomed to fail green energy subsidies to brain dead startups. Number 8, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Again, sounds great. Translation, they're going to regulate small business out of existence with government mandated minimum wages that bankrupt entire sectors of the economy. So much for the middle class. Force employers to meet hiring quotas for LGBTQ workers while mandating wage tiers under a centrally planned work economy dictated by the government. Not really by the government, really by the United Nations through public-private partnerships with these huge asset management companies. They're going to destroy free market economies and deny permits and licenses to those companies who, well, they don't abide by these government dictates. And remember from the last show, it was the Sustainable Development Goals, along with the 3 E's, along with the ESGs, that put the small businesses in checkmate. Goal number 9, build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. Again, sounds great. Translation, well, we're going to put nations into extreme debt with the World Bank, trap developing nations in an endless spiral of debt. To understand how this actually works, read the book Economic Hitman by John Perkins to understand the details of how these schemes operate behind the scenes that they've been using for decades. Number 10, reduce inequality with and among countries. Well, the translation, we're going to punish the rich. Well, the rich of the middle class, the entrepreneurs and innovators, confiscating nearly all gains by those who work and excel. And then we're going to redistribute that confiscated wealth to the masses of non-working human population. There's another word from taking from somebody who's actually working and contributing to society and giving it to somebody who doesn't. It's called theft. Number 11, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Translation, well, they're going to ban all gun ownership by private citizens, concentrating guns into the hands of obedient government enforcers who rule over an unarmed, enslaved class of impoverished workers. Force all humans into densely packed, tightly controlled cities where they're under 24-hour surveillance. Number 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. Now, we remember the definition of communism. It's the control of all private property, the means of production, and all avenues of trade. So the translation for this is begin levying punitive taxes and consumption of fossil fuels and electricity. Use social influence campaigns in TVs and movies and radio and social media to shame people who use gasoline, excess water, or electricity. Number 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Now, what is the translation? Set energy consumption quotas on each human being and start punishing or even criminalizing lifestyle decisions that exceed energy use limits set by the government. Institute total surveillance of individuals in order to track and calculate their energy consumption.
MasterCard and the United Nations released a new credit card, setting a limit on what you buy based on your carbon footprint. Here to tell us more about what is behind this whole new credit card scheme is OAN's Scott Wheeler.
Doconomy is a 3-year-old financial startup firm that says its objective is to tackle climate change through investments. Now it is in the credit card business. Doconomy has just teamed up with MasterCard and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change to issue a credit card that monitors its holders' carbon footprint and cuts off spending when they decide you've used more than your share of fossil fuels.
We're developing through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Number 14, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, the seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Translation, we're going to criminalize the operation of private fishing vessels and place all ocean fishing operations under the control of government central planning, only to allow favorable corporations to conduct ocean fishing operations. Now, who would these favorable corporations be and who would they be owned by? As we mentioned before, all of them are owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Berkshire Hathaway. Goal number 15, protect, restore, promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat deforestation, and halt the reverse of land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. Again, sounds great. Translation, roll out Agenda 21, enforce humans off the land into controlled cities, criminalize private land ownership, including ranches and agricultural tracts, tightly control all agriculture through a corporate corrupted government bureaucracy, whose policies are determined almost entirely by who? The same names come up: BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and Berkshire Hathaway. Goal number 16, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development and provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Well, what's the translation of that? Well, they're going to grant legal immunity to illegal aliens.
When migrants first walk in after intake, they will see a recreational room set up with rows of couches, TVs, Xboxes, and board games. There will also be a phone bank so migrants can connect with family in order to find more permanent housing.
We can do that in 24 hours, maybe even less. Many times, it's going to take longer than that. It could take days.
Next, there is a cafeteria that will provide migrants with 3 meals a day, and snacks, coffee, and tea will be available 24/7.
Those meals are all culturally appropriate. It is South American fare. The menu rotates on a regular basis.
And protected minority groups. Inclusive institutions means granting favorable tax structures and government grants to corporations that hire LGBTQ workers or whatever groups are currently in favor with their central planners in government. Goal number 17, strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. What does it mean? Translation, enact global trade mandates that override national laws, pass global trade pacts that bypass national lawmakers, and override intellectual property laws to make BlackRock and Vanguard, who own the world's most powerful corporations, maintain total monopolies in drugs, seed production, chemicals, and technology.
Referring to the free trade agreement as a regulated trade deal, he said countries that sign on the deal would be subjected to more rules and regulations than ever before.
We find that there are many things there which, if we agree to, will be in trouble internally as well as externally. Internally, we cannot anymore design our own economic policy because every policy we make in the country must conform with this free trade agreement. For example, if we say, well, we want to give these contracts to local, it's not possible because you must be open.
Dr. Mahathir also pointed out that disputes arising from these trade deals mean corporations could sue sovereign states at investor arbitration tribunals in secrecy. Dr. Mahathir in his speech warned governments to be cautious, saying that those who refuse to conform are subjected to economic sanctions. He also said that the One World government wants to undermine all other governments and would not hesitate to invade and occupy sovereign states to achieve its agenda.
Then they're going to nullify national laws and demand total global obedience to trade agreements authored by these powerful corporations, rubber-stamped by the United Nations. This will be done at the national, the regional, and global levels. If you're asking yourself, how is all this possible? Then I'll refer you back to episode 1, where we provide an end-to-end overview on what the New World Order is and how it's being implemented. Until then, stay up to date with everything Iconic by following us on all of our social media. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. To support us, you can go to patreon.com/theiconicpodcast and make a monthly pledge. You can also support us by going to theiconiclabel.com and purchasing some of our gear.